My name is Clara Vance, and for 22 years, I was a master of logistics, a conductor of complex corporate orchestras. I negotiated multi-million-dollar deals before breakfast and managed teams across 3 continents. When I walked away from all of it 4 years ago, at the top of my game, people thought I was crazy. I thought I was choosing peace. I thought I was choosing my daughter, Mia, who was 6 at the time. More importantly, I thought I was choosing a financially unassailable position for my family in our beautiful home in Crestview Lakes. Because I took my entire final bonus and retirement payout and slapped it down to pay off the mortgage in full. No more debt. We were safe, but I was wrong. I hadn't bought safety. I had purchased a golden cage. The man who locked the door was my husband, Arthur Thorne. The anatomy of selfishness knew Arthur was selfish, of course. I'd spent 2 decades working myself raw while he kept a comfortable, mid-level job. His career didn't demand the kind of sacrifice mine did, and I was fine with that. It meant one of us could be a consistent presence for Mia. But his selfishness wasn't about work. It was about convenience. The red flags weren't waving anymore. They were a giant, flapping banner I'd just chosen to ignore. Take last month. It was 5 days before the argument that blew up our lives, and the issue was a simple, normal family thing. Mia was having a playdate with her cousins. It was supposed to be a couple of hours of playtime, followed by pizza. Normal, easy kid stuff. I didn't include Arthur in the plans. I knew what would happen. If I'd mentioned it, he'd go ballistic. 2 hours of just waiting? He'd whine, as if 2 hours of watching television or scrolling on his phone was an unbearable sacrifice. And then a meal? That's my entire evening. He was a master of the excuse. School activities? Too tired. Night shift sleep schedule, trips to the park? Too sunny, bad for my allergies. He protected his personal comfort zone with the ferocity of a siege general. He missed years of Mia's life because he was too tired, but when his family, his mother, or more specifically, his 2 sisters needed anything, the man became a superhero. I watched him drop everything, stay up for 24 hours straight, drive 3 states over, fix a leaky faucet, and come back beaming. He'd be energized, happy, and fully present. The exhaustion only ever seemed to apply to my needs, Mia's needs, or the general needs of our shared life. The contrast wasn't just a difference in priorities. It was a system of devaluation. The poisoned wordsy had grown accustomed to the emotional cold shoulder, but nothing prepared me for the sickening sweetness I found on his phone the day before our explosion. I wasn't snooping, not really. I picked up his phone to check the calendar, a simple logistics check, something I did 1,000 times a week. That's when I saw the string of texts with his sister Bethany, and my throat tightened into a knot I couldn't swallow. The texts weren't simple check-ins. They were therapy sessions. I love you, Beth. You're always the one person who understands what I'm going through. Thank you for always being there for me. You guys are the only thing that keeps me grounded. Don't worry about the car repair. I promise I'll always have your back. I had never heard those words directed at me. For 20 years, I was his wife, the mother of his child, the architect of his financial security, and the sole manager of his home. And yet, this man, who barely spoke to me beyond household logistics, was a font of emotional support and gentle language for his sisters. He was a different person entirely, the compassionate, devoted, emotionally available man I had mistakenly thought I married. For me, I got the clipped commands, the eye rolls, and the martyr act, that realization that he had the capacity for love and support, and simply chose not to extend it to me was a deeper betrayal than any affair. It was the deliberate denial of emotional intimacy. The financial weapons argument finally erupted because I was done being ignored. It was late, and I was exhausted from a day of taking care of the house, helping Mia with homework, and secretly submitting applications for consulting work. I pushed back on something trivial. Maybe he left his shoes in the hallway. Maybe he forgot to take the trash out, but I let years of resentment seep into my voice. You You never lift a finger around here, I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. And you act like everything I do is invisible, he scoffed. What exactly do you do, Clara? You're retired. I'm the one that comes home from a shift and still has to listen to this nonsense. That was the opener. I decided to push it. I manage everything. I paid off this mortgage with my own money. And you know what? You never even offer me money. I have to ask you like a child for every expense. The shock on his face was satisfying, but short-lived. His eyes narrowed, and he delivered the ultimate, calculated blow. He wanted to call it quits. He escalated instantly. Fine, let's call it quits. But don't you forget who is actually working right now. Who do you think is putting food on the table? The air left my lungs. The weight of those 6 words, putting food on the table, hit me like a physical punch. It was true. I had my savings, but my day-to-day expenses, the utility bills, the groceries, they were coming from his checking account. He saw the effect of his words. The condescension was thick in his voice. I'm the one with the job, Clara. You don't even have one. You're relying on me. I felt choked. Humiliation was a bitter taste in my mouth. I, the woman who used to run a multi-billion-dollar department, was being financially gaslit by a mid-level manager, and I couldn't deny the basic fact. I was 49, searching for jobs, and for 4 years, I had relied on him for daily sustenance. I felt so small. That feeling of smallness lasted exactly one night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the house I paid for. And I remembered one thing my old CEO used to say: never let an opponent weaponize your own assets against you. Arthur thought he had exposed my weakness, my lack of a current salary. He had actually revealed his. He thought the money was the source of his power. Fine, I would take the money, and with it, his power, and I would leave him nothing but the echo of his own cruel words. Operation Financial recoil. The next morning, I was no longer a hurt wife. I was Clara Vance, CEO, executing a hostile takeover of my own life. My goal was simple: exit with 100% of the assets I had brought in, establish financial independence, and shatter his self-image completely. My plan had 3 phases: extraction, audit, and exposure. Phase 1. Extraction: the silent return to power. I had a massive network from my corporate days. I didn't waste time with entry-level positions. I leveraged my connections and went straight for high-level consulting work. I didn't even update my LinkedIn profile. I reached out directly to 5 former colleagues. Within 10 days, I secured a lucrative, remote contract role with a firm in Atlanta. The pay was phenomenal, and the hours were flexible. I opened a completely new bank account at a different institution across town. I called it the contingency fund. Every dollar from my new consulting income went straight there. Arthur never looked at his own accounts, let alone mine, so the transition was invisible. He was too busy being the breadwinner to notice I was quietly rebuilding an empire. I updated my resume, focusing solely on the iron goal by 2030. But knowing the consulting money was the key to unlocking that future now. Phase 2. Audit the data collection. Arthur's argument that he put food on the table was the exact hook I needed. I decided to take his statement literally and professionally. I was going to create a forensic accounting audit of our entire marriage. I started gathering the evidence, the home equity. I pulled the deed to the house, confirming I was the primary owner and the mortgage was paid in full from my funds. This was the single largest asset, the bills. I collected 5 years of utility, insurance, and tax statements. I digitized everything, creating color-coded spreadsheets, Arthur's contributions. I meticulously pulled the last 4 years of our joint checking account statements. I itemized every single payment he made for groceries, utilities, and minor expenses. I didn't exclude anything. I added it all up. Every pizza night, every oil change, every light bill he paid for, my contributions. I calculated the market value of my unpaid labor, using a professional estimate for a full-time housekeeper. family cook, and logistics manager in Crestview Lakes. I calculated the conservative value of the 4 years I spent managing the home and raising Mia. I added that figure to the massive mortgage payoff. The audit was a work of art, a complex financial model that laid bare the true cost of our marriage. The numbers were staggering. Arthur's total financial contribution over 4 years was less than the interest I would have paid on the mortgage if I hadn't paid it off. Phase 3. Exposure, the psychological weapon. The financial audit was for the divorce lawyer, but the psychological exposure was for Arthur. His true vulnerability wasn't his wallet. It was his pride and his image with his sisters. He needed them to believe he was a good, kind, struggling hero. I turned my attention back to the text messages. I had screenshots of all his loving, supportive texts to his sisters, and I juxtaposed them with the cruel, dismissive messages he had sent me and the excuses he gave for ignoring Mia. I created a 2-column document titled, The Two Arthurs, a behavioral study. I focused on a specific upcoming event, his sister Bethany's birthday party, which Arthur had already cleared his schedule for. Of course, I waited until I had 2 months of 6-figure income in my contingency fund. I had the job, the money, and the evidence. Now, it was time for the final move. The calculated Wakuti didn't file for divorce first. I went straight for the ultimate, most visible disruption to his comfortable life. Selling the house. I called a realtor and put the house on the market, priced to sell fast. Since the deed was in my name, I didn't need his permission or his signature. The for sale sign went up on the lawn on a Tuesday afternoon. Arthur came home late from a shift, saw the sign, and his veneer of calm shattered. He burst through the door, screaming, a look of pure panic on his face. What the hell is this, Clara? What did you do? I was sitting calmly at the dining room table, a small stack of papers in front of me. I was completely composed. I'm exercising my rights as the property owner, Arthur, I said, my voice calm, professional, and deadly quiet. We're selling, he stammered, his face red. You can't do this. This is my home. You're retired. You have no job. I slid the first 2 documents across the table. The first was the notice of intent to vacate. The second was my job offer letter from the Atlanta consulting firm, complete with the salary details. I resigned 4 years ago, Arthur. I didn't retire. And I found a new job 6 weeks ago. I'm moving to a new apartment downtown next week. He started to argue about the finances, his voice escalating to a shriek. I paid for everything. You owe me. I put the food on the table. I looked him straight in the eye and delivered the checkmate. I slid the final piece of evidence across the table, the detailed marital expenses report. He picked it up, his eyes flying over the meticulously itemized list of his $75,000 in grocery, utility, and small household payments over 4 years. Then he saw my total contribution line, the mortgage payoff plus the value of my unpaid labor coming in at over $600,000. The last item was a cashier's check, tucked into the report. That check, Arthur, I said, pointing to the piece of paper, is for $75,000. It represents 100% of your verifiable financial contribution to this house and our daily lives over the last 4 years. I believe that makes us financially even. You bought my groceries for 4 years. I bought your financial security. He was speechless. The man who wielded his paycheck like a weapon was suddenly holding the evidence of his own minuscule investment. The final exposure, the final act of the revenge wasn't for me. It was for the integrity of his relationships with his sisters. I filed for divorce that night, citing irreconcilable differences. The next day, I sent a small, separate envelope to Bethany's house, addressed only to her. It contained 3 items. A handwritten, polite note saying, Bethany, I want you to know how much I value your kindness to me over the years. I wish you all the best. A copy of the To Arthurs, a behavioral study. No explanation, just the text messages showing his sweet, supportive words to them, juxtaposed with the cruel, dismissive, and utterly absent behavior toward his own child and me, a copy of the detailed marital expenses report but with a single, handwritten annotation from me. He says he loves you all because he desperately needs you to believe he's not the man who would tell his wife she was worthless. I didn't have to call or explain. The financial report showed the total control and lack of investment. The text comparison showed the complete emotional lie. His sisters, the women he desperately needed to see him as a hero, now had irrefutable proof that he was a selfish, calculating fraud. When I moved out the following week, I didn't see him. I just left the keys on the kitchen counter. The real devastation came a month later, not from the divorce court, but from his family. He called me once, not to rage about the house, but about his sisters. They won't talk to me. What did you send them? He shrieked. They think I'm a monster. You showed them who you are, Arthur, I replied calmly. I just helped them read the paperwork. The ultimate victory wasn't the profit from the house sale, which was substantial. It was the fact that Arthur lost the one thing he truly valued, his manufactured image as the good guy. He was left with his true self, the selfish, isolated man who couldn't spare 2 hours for his daughter but had all the time in the world for his own ego. And while he struggled with the emotional and financial fallout, I was back in the game, a successful consultant, a powerful mother, and a confident woman, setting my sights on that ARN certification by 2030. I finally had the peace I paid for years ago. That's the thing about revenge sometimes. The sweetest kind is letting people destroy themselves, and then handing them the invoice.